going to bake up a loaf of our sourdough bread, and we're going to make some stuffed manicotti with some Italian fried chicken, so kind of like a chicken parm manicotti, so kind of a happy blend of them together. So let's start by getting our sourdough, which kind of poofed a little bit over. Let's pull this off, there we go. And then we're gonna flip it out and we're gonna bake it. You know, sometimes when I don't divide the bread up as evenly as I think I've done, then one poofs over and one doesn't. So I have a second loaf in my fridge and it's perfectly in its shell. And this one definitely had more in it, but they bake up just the same. Okay, pull off our little thing from our cheesecloth here. And this one's gonna be a big loaf. I hope he fits in there well. But we're gonna give him a nice big expansion score. There we go. And then, again, we'll just do our really simple kind of shape or wheat leaf on here. And then I'll do one more cut in our expansion score. And then we're gonna drop this in our Dutch oven, which is nice and hot, but this guy is gonna be a tight fit in here because he was really pulling out over ours. So I'm gonna try to slide him in here as best as possible. There we go. But he'll poof up and he'll take the shape of my Dutch oven, so no worries. We're gonna put our lid on, and then we're gonna bake this at 500 for 20 minutes with the lid on. That lid is gonna help trap in that moisture, and it's going to prevent the bread from, the crust from getting too brown. Then we will take the lid off and bake it for 20 minutes at 450. So I'm gonna put my timer on. There we go. And now let's start making our manicotti. We'll drop our noodles into boil. We'll make our filling. And that way it can go in when we turn the temperature down to 450. We can put our manicotti in.
You have a question? What's your favorite holiday to cook for?
I would have to say it would probably be our Christmas, because I do the Swedish smorgasbord or Julebord, which is this Swedish feast that has all these traditional things that we always had growing up. And it's a little crazy because there's certain rules about what food you can eat at what course. But it is one of my favorite things to do because I try to cook as much like authentic food as possible. Okay, we've got our manicotti noodles here. I'm gonna get scissors to open them up because I try to be as delicate with them as possible so they don't break, but it looks like I have one broken noodle in here already. But we're gonna boil these for about 5 minutes. You don't boil them too long because you want them to still be firm so that you can stuff them easily. So we're gonna pop these in our boiling water with some salt in there. Okay, and I'm gonna even put my ones that have, well, that one's pretty broken. If they're cracked, they're fine, but if they're broken, it's kind of hard to stuff it. Although sometimes you get the manicotti that's like wrapped up in all these different things, and that gets a little bit crazy to unwrap. Okay, we've got our manicotti in here. We're gonna let that boil for just a few more minutes. While we're waiting, let's work on making our filling for it. So we're gonna start by adding in our, there it is, our ricotta. So we're gonna use a pound of ricotta. I like to use whole milk ricotta because I think that it just gives you a much better end product versus using like the low fat on here. And I figured if you're making manicotti, you're not making a diet food, so might as well make it right. Okay, so we've got our whole pound of our ricotta in there. And then we're gonna add in 2 cups of mozzarella cheese. So I'm gonna use, this whole bag is about 2 cups. I'm gonna use it in here. And I like to also get a whole milk mozzarella cheese whenever possible because I think it just tastes a little better. So So we've got our 2 cheeses in here. I like the mixture. You can also use Parmesan cheese in there, but I'm going to be using some Parmesan in my chicken breading as well as on the kind of final top bake. So I'm not going to be putting it in there. But we are going to put in some diced up or minced up spinach. So I'm going to take a handful of baby spinach here and we're going to mince it up. My husband looks very sad about it, but I like to say he's not going to notice it at all because it's going to kind of just cook away to nothing. Spinach is one of those great vegetables that really has no flavor when you cook it up with other things.
Isn't that an oxymoron? A great vegetable?
It is a great vegetable. My husband and I have very different tastes in food. I think we complement each other well when we go to restaurants because he likes the meat and I like all the sides. The sides are where it's at. I love it when you get those restaurants where you can actually order like as a meal, like 10 different sides, and that just is my happy place. Okay, we're gonna chop these up nice and small because I don't want to be eating a manicotti and I pull out a whole leaf. And this is about, honestly, by the time you get it chopped up, it's gonna be like 1 cup, but my aim is like 2 cups, 2 loosely packed cups, but the more you mince it, the smaller and smaller it will pack down. Okay. So we're gonna add this into our mixture as well. That you won't even notice. And then we're going to add in some pesto. Now you could add in some minced up basil if you want to add a little bit more kind of a kick on fresh, but pesto just adds a nice bit of flavor to it, which I feel like you need because otherwise I feel like there's a lot of monotony between the ricotta and the Parmesan or the mozzarella cheese. So we're gonna add in a good like heaping spoonful, so about a tablespoon or so of pesto. You can add more if you want more pop and flavor, but I like to keep it pretty mellow for my kids. And then we're gonna add in some Italian seasoning, about, I wanna say 1.5 teaspoons. Again, this just makes a really great flavor in here. And then just a little bit of garlic salt. You don't need much because mozzarella cheese is gonna add a bit of saltiness, but ricotta is pretty bland. So we're gonna add in about 1 teaspoon. And then we're gonna mix this together and then we'll be ready to fish out those noodles here because it's been about 5 minutes. So let's give this a good mix. Now the spinach looks more poofy now, but as it cooks down, it shrinks in size. But here is our lovely kind of flavored up filling for it. It's really basic. And I know you can do so many different, like you could saute up a bunch of veggies and do it. But this one's just a really simple one. Looks like I got some chopped up spinach in my pan. Let me grab some tongs here and we're gonna just fish these guys out. I'm just gonna first check them. They feel pretty good. You want them to be somewhat soft, but not like super soft because they need to hold their form. And the liquid in the ricotta and in the sauce is going to continue to cook them. Now they're a little bit tricky to grab out, but I find it's just easier to fish them out with tongs and to strain them and then bring them out. There we go. Yeah, it's like bobbing for apples in here. And a few more. And I will say, 1 box, while you might not think it's a lot of pasta, this will feed our family of 7, and we typically have enough to give my parents leftovers because they are very, very filling. And then you put them, the kids will typically have, the little ones will have about 1, the older ones will have about 2. But you put them with the fried chicken, I'm making a tomato salad and some diced fruit, and you've got a pretty filling meal. Okay, I think I've got them all out, but I'm gonna drain this just in case. Make sure, yep. There we go. And we're gonna let these sit and cool for just a little bit. as we finish mixing up our base for this so that you don't burn yourself. Oh, you know what? I forgot to grab out my piping bag. The easiest way to fill these up is with a piping bag. So I'm gonna grab my piping bag over here. If you don't have a piping bag at home, use a gallon-sized Ziploc baggie and fill it up. But if you sometimes like to bake like I do, I have a stockpile of piping bags. I just have to get them out of my baking side. This is going to make it so much easier to put your filling inside your ricotta. So we're gonna get this. Let me grab a spoon and we're gonna scoop it into our bag, and that way we can pipe it inside our shells here.
Can you go over the filling, please?
Yes. So the filling, we have a pound of ricotta. I use whole milk, and then we're gonna add it. We added in 2 cups of mozzarella, about a tablespoon of pesto, about a half a tablespoon of Italian seasoning, and about 2 cups of diced up spinach, and about a teaspoon of garlic salt. So we're gonna get our things cupped open. That way we can fill this up nicely. This will give us a time for our ricotta to cool down, or our noodles to cool down here. So again, if you don't have a piping bag, just fill it up, Ziploc baggie, and that way you can cut the tip off in the corner, and it's really easy to pipe it in there. That's what I used to do when I was making like cupcakes all the time before I got piping bags, because you can do just a really pretty cupcake with a simple kind of topping on it. Let's make sure we get all of the goodness in here. Now, if you wanted to add, I'm gonna do like an Italian fried chicken cutlet, you know, like a chicken parm to go with this. But if you wanted to skip that, you could saute up some Italian sausage and you can add it in here as well to give a nice little, you know, meat base. Or there's times where I also make a meatball to go in it. But here we go. So we've got it in. And then just make sure you don't cut your tip too wide so that it can pipe in fairly easily. So we're just gonna cut the bottom off of our piping bag. A Ziploc baggie, you'll just cut the bottom off as well. Now is the fun part. And I will say, with this, you're not just gonna pipe all the way through with one side. You're going to squeeze, and then you're gonna fill it up on the other side. So just kind of like you're doing almost like a cannoli. Give this a good twist. Once I get pumping in, it gets a little bit easier. There we go. And this will have a nice, again, this is full of like great cheese, and so it's nice and filling, each one of these. And they do tend to expand a little bit more when we cook them in our sauce. Woo. Good thing I caught it. They're slippery. There we go. And this is the reason why you don't want to, you cook your shells for only 5 minutes, because not only are they going to soak up the extra liquid that's inside the ricotta cheese, but if they're too flimsy, they're going to be too hard to fill up. You know what? We're just going to cut it a smidge bigger. That mozzarella cheese is catching. There we go. Much easier. And fill it up. And I will say I have found that with a pound of ricotta and a bag of mozzarella cheese should be enough for 1 box of manicotti. It seems to work well with the little extra, you know, the chopped up veggies in there. But if you're unsure, what you should do is just partially fill and then go back over and top each one off so that you're not having to try to scoop some out towards the end. Go. big piece of cheese. And there we go. Imagine having to do a huge sheet tray of these. Whew.
You have a question? Do you ever add an egg to the filling?
You know, you can add an egg to it to keep the base to help hold it together, but I like it without the egg. You know, the egg does help it firm up a little bit more, but I really like the kind of the slightly runnier texture of it, and with the adding the mozzarella in, it gives it a more of a meaty base to it as well. But I know, yes, you can definitely add in egg. I just have always done it without, and so I kind of just prefer it that way. There we go. That one went all the way through. And then we're gonna be down. See, you know how I had to get rid of one shell because it had cracked up? There's gonna be like enough in here for about one more, so I'll just go over and top off all of those with that little bit of extra paste that we would have missed out on. There we go. So now I'm just gonna, again, just top off any of these that are with this little bit extra. There we go. And I find, again, I seasoned up this because if you just keep it plain like ricotta without any flavor in it, it can be a little, you know, bland. It's the same thing when I make my lasagna. I always add a little bit of pesto to the ricotta as well because, you know, when you get a bunch of it, it just gets to be too much. Adding this adds a whole nother layer of flavor complexity. There we go. And I'm not one to waste anything, so we're gonna fill this up. There we go. Okay, so we've got these in here. Gonna lay them out and try to lay them as flat as possible. On here, this is a 9 by 13 inch kind of cast iron baking dish, so it sits really well. Wash a little off my hands. And then we're gonna pour our sauce over this. And we're gonna see, I have several jars here. So I'm gonna use up some jars that I have. Just use your favorite marinara sauce. Now you can also do a cream-based sauce if you want to. I have marinara that I wanted to use up, and then I figured this is gonna go well with the chicken parm kind of concept, so we're using this. So we're gonna pour it over. I think I can get through my 2 partial jars and be enough. But you wanna have a nice coating on it because this is gonna also help the noodles absorb extra liquid. So you're gonna get that kind of soften up from the ricotta as well as from the marinara. And then, be good with this one. I had a giant jar of marinara and then this tiny one. This should be good. Okay. So we're just covering it over, making sure it kind of covers the whole bit of everything. So all in all, that was probably about 40 ounces of marinara. Give it a good shake around. There we go. To kind of fill up any of those gaps. Okay. What we're gonna do is we're gonna bake it for a little bit without the cheese on. Then when we're doing it, we're gonna put the cheese on. You don't wanna put the cheese on for the whole 20 minutes that it's in there. With the temperature being so high because that cheese will burn, but we will, with that sauce, it will protect it. So what we'll do is we'll bake it for part and then we'll take it off for add the last bit on, like the last 10 minutes. Okay, let's get our chicken prepped and get ready to fry this guy up. So I have 4 chicken fillets that we're gonna cut, or chicken breasts that we're gonna cut in half. But I'm gonna first trim off some fat that I see here because that will just be really chewy when we fry it up. Now these chicken fillets or breasts are really, really fat, so we're gonna fillet them in half. That way they will cook up a lot nicer. And these are huge, so there really are like 2 servings in each one. So we're gonna fillet them in half, try to cut against the grain. That's gonna give you a more tender chicken. If you want to, you can always pound your chicken out using, you know, a meat tenderizer. but I find filleting it in half gets me thin enough where I don't need to pound it out anymore. And cutting against the grain is going to make it nice and tender. Now, if I was using pork, like doing like a, a fried pork tenderloin or a Wiener Schnitzel, then yes, I would pound it out because pork is a much tougher meat than chicken, and that pounding makes it even more tender. But I find just kind of cutting against the grain here gives me a thin enough piece that's also nice and tender. And for those of you who don't know what cutting against the grain refers to in your chicken, is when you cut your chicken open, you will see kind of this texture right here. And so if you're cutting against it, you're gonna reveal a lot of that texture up. Those are like the tendons inside the chicken that you are cutting up, which is going to make them more tender. So it'll give you a shaggier look on your piece of meat, but it's going to make it more tender because you're loosening up those fibers on there instead of keeping them firm. There we go. And perfect. So I've got my 4 chicken breasts into 8 now. Give my hand a quick wash because we're going to have to go over to our sourdough here because it is just about ready for it to go off. Okay. Dry my hands. We're going to pop our manicotti in as well. Again, without the cheese topping on it. And you don't have to add a cheese topping on it if you don't want to. You can also keep it fairly plain here. We're going to add this in because, again, I have about 20 seconds left on the timer here. So we'll pop this guy in. We're going to take this one out. Let me clear this guy off before he peeks at me. And we're going to take our lid off. And you can see our beautiful poof here. That's why I said even though it was kind of flattened out, because it was a little big for this, I knew it was going to puff up well. So now we're going to bake it for 20 minutes. And we're going to turn our temperature down to 450. So we baked it for 20 minutes with the lid on at for 500. Now we're going to do it with the lid off at 450. And then let me set my timer. I'm going to set my timer for 10 minutes so that I will come back here, put cheese on the manicotti, and then we can add the additional 10 minutes so I don't forget about it. But let's get our chicken going and prepping here. So I'm going to slide this right over the way. We'll put this over here. We gotta heat up our oil, we gotta make our dredge and get this going. So since we've got, my rule of thumb is for every chicken breast, I use about 1 egg. So since these were 4 full chicken breasts, I'm gonna use 4 eggs. And that's for for our dredging and the egg to kind of get it to hold on. We're gonna add about 1 cup and like almost 2 cups of flour here, of all-purpose flour, just a little shy. And then we're going to make sure we season up this dredge well because we want this chicken to have a lot of great flavor. So we're going to add in about 2 tablespoons of onion powder. It's going to make a really lovely savory flavor to our mixture, as well as, I'm going to go wash that, as well as get a nice, delicious kind of golden color on it. Then we're going to add in about a tablespoon and around 1.5 tablespoons of Italian seasoning. A good amount to add nice kind of wonderful flavor to it. You know, mild, not too much. And then, since I really love oregano, and I know they have it in Italian seasoning, but I love it, we're going to add a little bit more. We're going to add about another, 1.5 teaspoons of dried oregano. And then our saltiness, we're going to get from some garlic salt here. And we're going to add about 1 tablespoon because we need to make sure we flavor all of this chicken up. And then we're going to stir and mix that together, but I'm going to prep our panko. We're going to add in seasoned panko breadcrumbs and some Parmesan cheese to our mixture so that it will have a nice little crunch to it. So it's kind of like a chicken parm, but we'll be adding it to our sauce. Now, I always like to keep mine a little bit deconstructed because I find if you put your chicken parm in your marinara sauce and then do it, it gets a little soggy. So I like to keep mine separate until we're ready to serve it.
Could you use cornmeal instead of flour?
You could, but it would have a really gritty texture. I wouldn't recommend cornmeal. If you were trying to do a gluten-free option, almond flour actually works fairly well with it. I would use that over it because it's fairly mild. Okay, so we're mixing in our spices here. There we go. And then just making sure I don't have any pockets. They like to hide in my little edges of it. There we go. And then we're gonna whisk up our 4 eggs here. And then I'm gonna, before we start dredging, I'm gonna start heating up our, wow, this egg did not wanna break on me. Got 1 more egg. There we go. We're gonna whisk these together. We're about to go hand in with these, so I'm not too worried about my fork getting some egg on it. So just whisk it up. You wanna make sure that none of your egg yolks are separated from your whites, or essentially make sure you don't have any long stringy bits of egg white. Because like I'm gonna see like right here, if you do it, then when you try to bread your chicken, that will hang on to it and you'll get this really snotty, slimy part that won't crisp up and it will just be a soggy part of chicken. So just make sure you don't have any long stringy egg whites in your mix. Okay, that should be pretty good. Rinse my hands real quick. And we're gonna add our oil over here so we can start heating it up. Now, you don't need to have so much oil that your chicken is submerged. You need to have a nice thin layer on here so that it can fry on both sides. So I have about a cup of oil in here. And I'm using olive oil because we're not gonna heat so high that it's gonna smoke. We're gonna heat it around like 350. But I'm gonna heat it up on high until it gets a nice little, like when I drop water in, I get a sizzle.
You have a question? Where'd you get those bowls?
These bowls are from Target. I've had them for a very long time. They're part of the Joanna Gaines, collection. They're like a nice stoneware. I get to say I love her stuff. I think I got them, 2 or 3 years ago. So it's been a hot minute for them, but I do love them. They've got a nice heft to them. They're a pasta bowl, but I rarely eat pasta in them. I use them for I almost use them as like a prep bowl all the time. There we go. I actually ended up so when I bought these, I think actually they're even older. They're like 5 years old. I only had 3 kids and I thought we were done. And so I just had like an 8 set of my like plates and bowls and whatnot, because I was like, oh, that would be perfect. 5 kids, and then when my parents are over, that's 7 plus an extra spare. Well, fast forward now, I have 5 kids, and that means we're 7, and when my parents over, that's 9. And I was like, we do not have enough plates. So I couldn't find this same collection, but I actually ended up buying another one of her collections of plates so that I would have enough of it. And so now I have like this fun little mix and match between her stuff, which I love. Not that I don't have like 20 other sets of plates throughout my house. I'm a little crazy. I've got Halloween plates and Christmas plates and just plain white plates. So many different settingwares that I never use, but I can never get rid of because I just love them. And one day they will come in handy. I'm not as bad as my mother. My mother has a lot of place settings in there. Okay, we're using your clean hand. We're gonna add in our panko over here. We need about a cup or so of panko, seasoned panko breadcrumbs. And then we're gonna add in a handful or so, about, let me grab a little bit more, of our Parmesan. You want about, half a cup in there. And then we're gonna mix it up. And then we can do our chicken into our egg and into it to get our second coating on, because this is our first coating, which is important for creating a binder to hold the egg on, which will then hold our final crumb. Okay, let me first get a drop of water and check my oil, because I feel like we might be getting close. Pretty close. So I'm going to turn this down to a medium, right around 5. And that way we can go into our egg, and then I'll pop my chicken right into the fryer for the first ones. Here we go. And we're going to pat this down so it holds on all of our lovely little crumb texture to it. There we go. And then we're gonna go, oops, let's get a little bit more on that. Right into, there we go. And we'll let that start cooking up while we dredge and get our other cutlets to go in here. Now it's important, so we heated up our oil to high, but once it was hot, I turned it down to a medium. And the reason is I want my oil slightly hotter than what I cook it in, because when I add these chicken breasts in there, it's going to cool the temperature of my oil down. And you want hot oil, because if you don't have hot oil, you're going to have soggy chicken. And if you're going to do the work to fry it, make sure it comes out right. Yeah, so we're frying it right over like a level 5, so a medium. I was hoping I could get 4 fillets in each one, but there's no way I'm gonna get 4 fillets in here, so we'll have to do 3 and 3 and then a lucky 2. These are very long chicken breasts. Okay, we'll pat this down and then we can get this last one in here. There we go. And I always just flip over and give it a really good pat down on both sides. It's kind of a messy process, but it makes the best kind of fried chicken. And I will say fried chicken loosely, like fried Italian cutlets. Okay, I'm gonna let's see, yeah, I'm gonna wash my hands because we are about to put some cheese on our manicotti. There we go. So let me get this all scrubbed off. Kind of a messy process. Okay, we're gonna go to the oven. I'm gonna bring my cheese over because we'll just do it over there by our oven while this is frying up. Rotate that. And I'm just doing mozzarella, but you could also throw on Parmesan too if you want it, but we're gonna kind of leave our Parmesan for a little bit apart. Here's a quick peek at our bread. It is looking gorgeous, still toasting up. Let's grab our manicotti out that it's nice and warm. You can see we've got a nice little bubble on it. I hear ya. Okay, and we're gonna sprinkle our cheese over it. That way you're gonna get this lovely kind of cheese crust on it. And this will only need, and just the second package, so about 2 cups over for using this size. This is about a 9 by 13. You don't need to have a super thick layer of it because this will melt and spread out, but a nice layer to get a good cheese melt on it. And then we'll pop this back in the oven. There we go. And then I'm going to set my timer for 10 minutes. There we go. Okay, let's get our, got it. Let's see, making sure I'm gonna rotate a little bit. I'll know when these are ready to flip when our side is nice and golden. But while we're waiting for that, let's get our salad, our tomato salad kind of prepped up here. Using some tomatoes from my garden, they're finally coming in. I had green tomatoes sitting on my my tomato plants for months, and now we're finally getting some. You know, better late than never. I did make fried green tomatoes because we had so many of them, but we've got some lovely heirloom tomatoes here, which are these kind of reddish, greenish, purplish ones, which are really delicious. And then, of course, some good old yellow heirloom. Again, whenever I plant stuff out in my garden, I always go for the weirdest, bougiest like versions of it. And this year I had planted purple bell peppers. None of them were purple. I planted 8 bell pepper plants, and I did not get a single purple bell pepper. So I was bamboozled. Okay, we're just gonna cut these into nice little chunks here. This is gonna be my daughter Evie's like happy place. She loves tomatoes. I love tomatoes, and I think that's where she got them from, is because she used to always steal my tomatoes out of my salad. And so I think she picked up her love for them from me. And so she'll be very happy with this. And we're keeping it really simple too. We're just gonna add a little bit of red onion and some fresh basil, a little drizzle of olive oil, and a little sprinkle of salt. Keeping it simple, letting the tomatoes shine. Okay, let's check our chicken over here. I'm gonna grab a spatula. I'm starting to see, and some tongs. Here's my tongs. Some nice kind of golden colors forming. Beautiful. I'm actually gonna let it cook a little bit longer. I've still got a pretty pale color right there, so I want it to cook a little bit more, but let me check. This is the first one I put in. This one, we're gonna kind of rotate them, and we'll let them do it. Now, I'll know they're ready in just a second. Here we go. Let's check this one. Yeah, we'll give them a little rotate because they're cooking a little hotter all in the middle. There we go. You should be ready to flip in about a minute or two. I always know you're gonna look for them and you're gonna wanna put them a little bit paler than your final product, because when they sit, they actually get a little bit darker after they've cooled. All right, let's add in some red onions here. So I will say, I keep one red onion and it will last me forever, because red onions are not very great for cooking like with heat with. So they're much better raw and dipped and stuff like that than they are if you saute them up. When you cook up a red onion, they lose a lot of its flavor, and so they're best enjoyed in their raw form. We'll sprinkle these a little bit around. And then we're gonna throw in some fresh basil. And then a little olive oil and salt.
You got a question? How are the bagels?
Oh, they were delicious. My kids were so happy when my older two, when they got home from school, because they get home a little bit after we get done. And they were very excited to come home to, I like to say, their second lunch, but for bagels, because they all love bagels. And I don't make them nearly as much as I should, but they were all very, very happy. Torrin's favorite is the cinnamon crunch ones. And then Lena's favorite is the everything bagel. And I will say, when Jack woke up, when Teddy got home from school, he had cinnamon crunch because he loves it as well. And Jack, he took a pumpkin seed one and proceeded to pull all of the pumpkin seeds off, and had a lot of fun with that. And then he ate the inside of it, not the crust or things, but he literally picked out the inside of the bagel, which, there's good old Jackie.
Do you have a question? How do you store the red onion between uses?
So I keep it in my veggie drawer, so I wrap it up in a paper towel so it doesn't get any moisture to it, and then just in my veggie drawer, where you have less humidity added to it. Okay, let's go check on our chicken here. We're starting, I can see we're getting nice kind of golden colors to it. Beautiful. So here's that nice golden brown. Now, any of those darker bits that you see, that's the cheese crisping up. It gets a little bit darker than the rest of it, but look how beautiful this is. Okay. And then we're gonna go, and I've got my fresh basil on here. We're gonna sprinkle a little bit of salt, just plain salt. And then we're gonna drizzle a little bit of olive oil on here. There we go. So we'll have a lovely tomato salad with it. Let's get our second, we're gonna finish up, let me check my timer on here before I get my hands all dirty. I'm gonna turn this down a smidge now that my oil's nice and hot. We're gonna get some paper towels to line our thing here so we can remove. I will say every chicken cooks a little bit faster after the first one, because then everything is fully heated up. There we go. Let's break these in half. Now I put my chicken, when it's done, on paper towels just like you would bacon. It absorbs the extra fat and it allows it to get nice and crispy instead of soggy. Okay, let's get the rest of this chicken breaded. That way we're ready to pop it in for our next round. So into our egg wash and into our mixture here. And we're gonna pat it up. Again, we have Italian seasoning, oregano, garlic, salt, Parmesan cheese, panko breadcrumbs, and flour in our breading. So it has this lovely flavor, and onion powder. Don't forget the onion powder. That gives it that nice golden color to it, because the natural sugar in the onion powder kind of caramelizes when you fry it. There we go. Turn it down just a smidge. And again, the key with frying up your chicken is to go on a lower temperature versus a higher one. When you cook it on too high of a temperature, what happens is you're gonna get a dark brown crust before your insides are cooked all the way through. So go low and slow so that your chicken cooks all the way through, and that way you don't burn your crust either. There we go. Okay. Let's see what this chicken is looking like. Beautiful. Look at this nice golden brown. You're gonna put it on your paper towel, the oil side down, so it doesn't get soggy. I'll let that one cook a little bit longer. And that one is looking good. So again, oil side down. But again, I want it to get a nice kind of dark brown kind of coloring to it. Let's see. Looking good. Beautiful. Okay, we're gonna put our next round of our chicken in. Here we go. And slide that in there. Okay. I'm gonna dredge these last two, that way they'll be ready for when we do round 3 of our frying, although I might do that one after because we're gonna be pretty much ready with the rest of our dinner here in just a second. That's the thing, is we're always cooking for a large family, so whenever I do any frying of anything, I've got to fry a lot more than the average family of 4 or 5 on here. Luckily, it's not like at Thanksgiving where I don't do fried chicken at Thanksgiving for anyone, because that would be frying up like 40 or 50 pieces of chicken.
You have a question. Do you have a menu for every night of the week that you post, or do you go live and it's a surprise?
The latter of the two. I go live and it's a surprise. You know, earlier today I thought I was doing chicken wings for dinner, and then I decided, I wanted to do this instead. I do not menu plan, even though I probably should, probably for my own sanity. I instead am an ingredient person, so I buy lots of ingredients and then buy what's on sale, what's in season, and then I figure out what I'm making from there. But as long as you stock your house full of basic ingredients, then you should be able to cook most anything. Slide this out of the way since we're about ready to bring our sourdough and our manicotti out. Okay. Beautiful. Okay. Let's get our sourdough. We're gonna pop this. I'm gonna grab my trivet right here. And then I'll grab my, once we get it out. When I cook my my sourdough, this Dutch oven stays very, very hot. So it's really important to take it out right after you're cooking so it doesn't continue to cook the bottom of your bread. That way you get a nice, perfect golden brown loaf. Put a little of that basil away. We've got our nice expansion core and our beautiful wheat leaf and our nice kind of, it makes the shape of our Dutch oven here because it was a big one. But again, it's going to be delicious. Now with sourdough bread, if you're new to making it, you cannot cut it as soon as you take it out of the oven. It needs to sit for about, I would say 10 to 20 minutes. Put this down right here. Let me grab my manicotti. Because if you cut it too soon, it's doughy inside and it's not good. It has to steam. Okay, let me grab this manicotti with its delicious cheese and ooey and gooey deliciousness here. And see how much we melted after 10 minutes on there? If we had left that cheese on there for the whole time under that high heat, it would get burned.
Yo, question, is the recipe for the sourdough bread posted anywhere?
I do have the sourdough bread. I have that recipe card available for everybody. So everybody can make that, as well as some tutorial videos on how you can make your own sourdough starter and your very first loaf. Because if you've never made sourdough before, you cannot just simply wake up one day and say, I'm gonna make sourdough bread today. It's a process, and it takes about a week of fermenting your flour to get your starter active enough to make your loaf of bread. But it is not a hard journey. It's really easy. It just takes a bit of time. And then it's the main difference between a yeast bread and a sourdough is there's a lot more proofing time needed. With a yeast bread, it's only about 2 to 3 hours that you need to proof. With a sourdough bread, you have 2 stages. You have your proofing on the counter and your proofing in the fridge, which gives you a better spring when you're cooking up. So it takes about 24 hours for a sourdough bread, but you can keep it proofing in your fridge for up to like 3 days. So it's one of those things where I make 2 loaves at a time. I have another loaf proofing in my fridge that I then can cook up tomorrow or the next day. Okay, since we actually are pretty much done with our first batch of everything, I might serve up our first layer because I'm not necessarily going to keep you guys on as we sit and fry through the remaining part. These need to cook a little bit longer. They've kind of got a pale color onto them, and again, I want them to be a nice golden brown that we have over there. So we'll let them sit for a second. That one actually looks, it's about ready. And we'll get this one. So these two.
And you have a question, how do you know when the chicken is done?
So I cook mine over a lower heat, and so when my crust gets to this kind of golden brown color, then it is cooked through. So I do it by visual because I'm not frying over such a high heat. And that's why I always recommend fry your stuff over medium to medium low. So this is frying on a 4. That way, by the time your crust gets to the right color, it will be cooked all the way through. If you leave your chicken really, really thick, that's gonna take a much longer frying time, and you're gonna need a lot more oil in there. So I always fillet them in half as well. That reduces the time for cooking. Okay, well, let's get our dinner served up here. Let me slide this over here, get my salad, and let me grab a plate. I'll get this to be my serving platter. Making sure not to touch. I have a tendency of when I take things out of the oven, I forget that they're hot and I'll grab them. And while my hands can withstand a lot of heat, that is very hot. Okay. So let me grab for manicotti. I'm going to use my little shovel. Let me grab tongs for the chicken, and we can have a spoon for our tomato salad. Okay. Doesn't want to agree with me there. Okay, let's get ready to serve up here. Grab my thing. So we're gonna start with our manicotti. I'm gonna scoop out, try to get 2 noodles here with our nice kind of pull on it. Look at that beautiful, delicious cheese pull. So this is our manicotti that we stuffed with ricotta and mozzarella cheese, spinach. Here, so you can actually see the inside of it. But you have some pesto flavorings in there as well, Italian seasoning, spices, and then we've covered it in a lovely marinara sauce. We're gonna serve this with our Italian fried chicken, which has Italian seasoning, oregano, garlic salt, onion powder, which will kind of give you this chicken parm with manicotti all together. And then of course, we're gonna serve it up with our fresh tomato salad from tomatoes from my garden that we drizzled with a little bit of olive oil, fresh basil, red onions, and a little bit of salt. And then of course, we will serve it up with a lovely slice of our sourdough bread. Again, it has to cool before we can cut into it, otherwise it's a bit gummy. Well guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page, so if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to that link and search for what we made. So we've got our chicken parm manicotti, and you can always watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets. I've got my Hextide pans, I've got my Nordic ware baking sheets, my spatulas, knives, all the different gadgets I use in the kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us.